Kia ora tātou. If we'll commence these proceedings. Hoi no ki ngā mate huhua. Haere atu rā, koutou. Haere atu koutou ki tua te arai. Hoi no ki ngā maunga whakahi o tēnei wāhi. Ki ngā moana, ia koutou te iwi kāinga o konei, tēnei wāhi ātāhu e te Waitemata. Ngā mihi ki a koutou. Me mihi ki a koutou e manaki nei ia mātau i whati nei ki ungi a koutou mai te wāhi tuatahi tai noa anō ki tēnei rā. Me whakanui hoki ki a tātou, ngā kanohi takohi ora i tāi maine. Tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. So, brief acknowledgement of our forebears and the responsibilities and resources they have passed on to us, as well as the people, the original holders and inhabitants of this region. It is a matter which we believe is part of the value system of contact in our whānau, that we do show that respect for people that are our hosts. So I will now invite our people here on the rostrum will stand. We're going to have the contact team members are going to sing a song. And the words of the song, as you can see up on the screens, this is something which the contact people thought was a good idea to have, because it talks about who we are, and the fact, as you can see from the translation, and the fact that we all share in these resources, and with that sharing come responsibilities to pass them on in good shape. Kia ora.
Ena mana, ena raiho, Ena ka ranga tanga maha. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Contact's annual shareholder meeting. My name is Rob McDonald, and I'm the chair of the Contact board. The meeting is being webcast live for shareholders who have not been able to attend in person. We're also offering our shareholders the option to join the meeting online through our share registry, Link Market Services virtual meeting portal. We hope that holding a virtual meeting will support greater participation and engagement amongst our shareholders, and I welcome those who are watching online. For those guests who are here in person, in the unlikely event of an emergency, if the fire alarm sounds, please follow the instructions of the ushers and exit out of gate G or gate F and continue across the car park to the assembly point on Remmers Avenue. In the event of an earthquake, please drop, cover, hold, then follow directions of the event staff. As a quorum is present and due notice of this meeting has been given, I declare the meeting duly constituted and open for business. I'd like to introduce others with me on the stage. To my immediate left is our Chief Executive, Dennis Barnes. Next to Dennis is Victoria Crone. Next to Victoria is Whaimutu Jews. And beside him is John McDonald. On my immediate right is our General Counsel, Catherine Thompson. Next to Catherine is Eleanor Trout. Then David Small. And next to David is Dame Therese Walsh. Other members of Contact's senior leadership team are also here today, as well as representatives from our auditors, KPMG. As you will have noted, today's meeting started with a greeting from Whaimutu Jews, followed by our Contact song, Mai I Ranga, which is customarily sung to support the greeting. We do this because it is important we acknowledge our relationship with our iwi stakeholders and the fact we use New Zealand's natural resources to generate energy, of which our iwi partners have an interest in. Today's meeting will commence with addresses from me as chair and from the Chief Executive, Dennis Barnes. Following this, we will consider the financial statements, and there will be an opportunity for shareholders to ask questions they may have on the financial statements. Then we'll move on to the resolutions that are outlined in the notice of meeting. We have 3 resolutions to put to the meeting today, and these resolutions will be decided by taking a poll. There will be an opportunity for shareholders to ask questions relating to these resolutions and to raise any additional matters that shareholders wish to discuss. I will first take questions from the floor and alternate between questions received from the floor and online. For those of you participating online through the virtual meeting website, will be able to vote and ask questions once you have validated your registration using your shareholder's number. My address today is a deliberate forward-looking view of the business and how it will fare in the rapidly changing world. A particular focus is Contact's ability to be a leader in tackling climate change with tangible actions that drive good business outcomes. New Zealand's energy sector is rapidly changing. We are facing increased expectations from investors, customers and communities, and increased focus on our environmental performance. We're also facing more volatile conditions in weather and security of fuel supply. Our people and assets have risen to these challenges and delivered strong financial performance in the last financial year. We delivered a full-year dividend of 39 cents per share, up 21% on the last year, and we are targeting a full dividend of 39 cents per share for the current financial year. Underpinning these results is Contact's operational efficiencies, the quality of our generation assets, and the strength of our balance sheet. This was enhanced by completing the sale of Aharoa Gas Storage and Rock Gas LPG business. With Aharoa, we have retained long-term access to gas storage services, and with Rock Gas, we have retained the ability to market LPG to our customers. The asset sales materially improve the strength of our balance sheet and positions us well for future investments. The time for talking about climate is over. It's action that now matters. We are continuing to make reductions in our carbon emissions, and we are focused on helping our customers do the same. You've heard this before, but I believe it's worth reminding ourselves that since 2012, we've more than halved our emission from electricity generation. It has fallen from nearly 2.5 million tonnes of CO2 emitted per annum to under 1 million tonnes. And in the last financial year alone, our emissions decreased by 16% from the prior year. It is worth noting since 2012, Contact has done more in absolute and relative terms to reduce direct emissions than any other major generator in New Zealand. We didn't just remove carbon emissions from the system, we invested over $800 million when we built the 166 megawatt geothermal power station at Te Mihi, developed the world's first Wairaki bioreactor, and renovated the 60-year-old Wairaki steam field. We recently became one of the first power companies in the world to have our carbon emissions targets verified by the Science Based Targets Initiative. Our targets are in line with the latest climate science says is needed to meet the goals of the Paris Agreement, to limit global warming to well below 2% above pre-industrial levels. These new targets are to reduce Scope 1 and 2 emissions by 34% from 2018 to 2026, and Scope 3 greenhouse gas emissions by 30%. To achieve this, we are reducing our own emissions and helping our large customers to do theirs. Notwithstanding the current strategic review of the aluminium smelter in Tiwai, the board believes a new geothermal power station at Tauhara Field remains New Zealand's cheapest and most attractive for renewable baseload generation. Adding this to our flexible portfolio of gas-fired and renewable generation assets helps us contribute to security of supply and a lower carbon future. We're currently drilling 4 appraisal wells on the Tauhara field, and the board will make a final investment decision on Tauhara next year. Earlier this year, the Interim Climate Change Commission reported to the government. They were clear that in order to meet the government's climate change ambition, the government should look at policy settings to support accelerated electrification of the process, heat and transport sectors. That is where the big gains can be made. The government itself can and should continue to make tangible steps to reduce the carbon footprint wherever it can, from electrification of the government vehicle fleet to conversion of thermal heating to electricity in the public sector. The Commission also effectively confirmed what we have always understood, that continued access to gas for the electricity generation will ensure New Zealand maintains the migration away from carbon-intensive fossil fuels like coal and petroleum without unduly burdening the economy and consumers. Our goal to reduce carbon emissions saw the board support the acquisition of 49.9% of Simply Energy, a provider of demand-side management tools to improve efficiency and reduce emissions. The steps we have taken this year are significant, and we have made substantial and positive impact on our business. You will have seen the news that Rio Tinto is conducting a strategic review of the Tiwai aluminium smelter. As a consumer of 14% of New Zealand's electricity, any closure could be impactful to our sector. It is too early to say what the conclusion of the review will be, but it is evident there is a desire to find a solution to enable the smelter to keep operating. Rio Tinto has cited the cost of electricity and transmission as reasons for the review, and we certainly share their frustration on transmission costs. The transmission pricing methodology review has taken too long, and the potential benefits to the smelter has reduced from more than $50 million a year in 2015 to $11 million now, with an implementation date pushed out to 2024. Sir, can I ask you to turn your phone off, please? Tiwai is a producer of high-quality, low-carbon aluminium and supports more than 3,000 jobs in Southland. If it were to close, carbon emissions would increase globally, and those jobs would be lost to New Zealand. Carbon is a global issue, and considering it from a New Zealand perspective is short-sighted. We should support and grow our low-carbon advantage, and that includes supporting businesses like the smelter. In early October, the government announced its decision on the report of the Electricity Price Review panel chaired by Miriam Dean. The government acknowledged the benefits of the current competitive retail market, but found room for improvement in energy hardship and consumer advocacy. We agree with the decision to introduce a consumer advocacy body, and we are committed to industry funding of this initiative. Contact is already phasing out prompt payment discounts and supports the recommendation of the panel to remove win-backs. The market will and should evolve, and the team will work with the officials and regulators as they deliver the changes that will flow from the review. The Minister has been clear that she wants to see action, and we will ensure that we are part of that process. The goal should be an enduring solutions rather than reactive or short-term solutions. History tells us that temporary or reactive fixes can be hard to unwind. Before I close, I'd like to focus on 3 areas of change at Contact. As you may have seen in our annual report, we've taken the decision to use the globally recognised international integrated reporting framework to report the performance of our business. The IR framework requires us to show how we create value for all our stakeholders. It also requires us to think about how we create value for our people, our brand, intellectual property, our assets, natural resources, and our customers, community, and relationships. This approach is particularly pertinent in the current global context where climate change is both a threat and an opportunity for those who can be part of the solution, such as ourselves and our business. In the financial year 2019, the membership of your board changed, with Sir Ralph Norris and Sue Sheldon retiring on the 31st of August 2018. We appointed 3 new directors, Dame Therese Walsh, David Small and John McDonald. Each of those directors brings valuable skills that complement the expertise of the longer-serving members. The board is focused on delivering values to you, the shareholders, and being a leader in the sector and the wider economy. In September this year, the board announced the appointment of Mike Fuge as the new CEO. Mike will start with Contact in the first quarter next year. Mike is currently CEO of Refining New Zealand, prior to which he has a long history in the energy sector, both in New Zealand and internationally. On behalf of the board, I'd like to thank Dennis Barnes for his substantial contribution as Chief Executive for the past 8 years. He has led Contact to an outstanding safety culture, more highly engaged employees and customers advocating for it in greater numbers, and delivered strong and sustainable financial performance over that period. Finally, on behalf of the board and leadership team, I would like to thank you all for your ongoing support of Contact. Now I will hand over to Dennis for an overview of the year.
Tēnā koutou katoa. Kia tātou kua hui me tēnei rā. Nau mai haere mai, ki runga I tēnei kaupapa te hui o tau. Greetings to you all, to those who have gathered here today. Welcome to the subject of the day, the annual meeting. Thank you, Rob, for your introduction and your kind words. But before I get going, I'd like to introduce my fellow leadership team members with me today. I don't expect them to stand up, but with me are Dorian, Venna, James, Catherine, and our new Chief People Officer, Jan Bibber. Jan joined us on Monday, so he's nice and fresh. I'd also like to acknowledge Megan Curra, who has been acting in Jan's role this year. Thank you. As this is my last address to you, our shareholders, I've been thinking about the importance of the AGM for reporting performance and for you to hold us to account. I've welcomed the discussions we've had at each AGM, both through the formal questions, but often the more personal and detailed conversation we have over morning tea. I can assure you that I've always welcomed your feedback. As Rob mentioned, we delivered a strong financial result in financial year 19. We also improved capital efficiency, deployed good risk management practices, again proved the value of the flexibility we have built into our generation portfolio. During financial year 19, our wholesale business successfully managed periods of low hydro inflows, constrained gas supply, and all of this reinforced the value of this diverse generation portfolio. Our customer business had a successful year where the Net Promoter Score, a measure of customer advocacy, continued to increase, and our churn levels were comfortably below the market average. We continued to digitise the customer experience and build data, automation and integration capability. We did this while lowering operating expenses and reinvesting savings in our brand and technology solutions. During the year, we participated constructively in the government-initiated electricity price review. The review highlighted that some families are struggling to pay for their energy, and that the prompt payment discounts are not always fair to customers who are unable to pay their bills on time. So we're evolving our product set, including the phasing out of our current prompt payment discounts. We've also made it easier for customers to connect with us online and are helping our most vulnerable customers keep the power on with prepay and flexible billing options. We have helped our customers avoid getting into difficult credit positions and intervened early if they did, which also delivered record low levels of outstanding debt. In addition, we've proudly supported EnergyMate, an industry-led programme to help families who are struggling to afford to heat their homes. Overseen by the Electricity Retailers Association, the programme is a collaborative effort between retailers, lines companies, community organisations and the government to provide in-home coaching, initially for 150 vulnerable families in South Auckland, Rotorua and Porirua. Financial year 20 hasn't started so well. On the things we can control, we continue to perform well, but hydrology and gas availability has impacted our earnings in the first 4 months of this financial year. The spring rains into our hydro catchments were a little late in arriving, but as we speak, we are getting very good hydro production. Having said that, we have had good cash management, and although our earnings are lower than average, we are tracking well on cash flow. Our dividend policy looks through these short-term variables, and as Rob mentioned, we're targeting a dividend of 39 cents per share for financial year 20. For our people, we again measured the engagement with an Ask Your Team survey. Our overall engagement score was 75%, which was well ahead of the 67% benchmark for private companies, but behind our 2018 score of 77%. The survey results will help us keep adapting and improving to raise engagement. We're committed to being an inclusive and diverse employer, and we recently achieved Rainbow Tick certification, recognising us as a workplace that accepts and welcomes sexual and gender diversity. This certification sits alongside the actions our people take every day to make Contact an inclusive place to work. On environmental sustainability, this year we became the first New Zealand energy company to have emission reduction targets approved by the Science Based Targets Initiative. We have committed to emissions reduction targets to align to a 1.5 degree global warming limit. We engaged with the government-appointed Interim Climate Change Committee as they developed their report into the government's renewable electricity aspirations. It was pleasing to see their report to government, which the Chair mentioned. The gains that can be made by decarbonising the transport and process heat sectors are significant, particularly when compared to the cost of 100% renewable electricity generation. This confirmed to me that we are on the right track with our strategy of working with existing and future customers to bring about increased electrification. And we continue to work collaboratively with Tangata Whenua and the communities around our sites to involve them, respect their interests, create opportunities, and give back in ways that are meaningful to them. Unfortunately, you may have seen that we had a landslip at one of our geothermal storage ponds in Wairake. Sediment and geothermal fluid went into the Waipa Wera stream and Waikato River in February, discolouring the Hooker Falls. We're thankful that no one was hurt. However, the discharge did impact the river, iwi and the community, and we deeply regret that. We're working with iwi and the local community to put things right and to learn from this event. It was an important reminder that we need to keep our commitments to environmental sustainability as more than just words on a page. Looking forward a bit, there is an exciting opportunity for Contact to decarbonise more of the energy use in New Zealand, supplying electricity for the conversion of fossil fuel-fired boilers and for electric vehicles. Electricity is the solution to a lower carbon future for New Zealand, unlike most other countries where it's the problem. There is, of course, an elephant in the room with the strategic review at the Tiwai aluminium smelter, and you will have heard and continue to hear much commentary on this as the review progresses. Much of this commentary is expected positioning, but I can assure you that there is a desire for a solution. But if the smelter were to close, Contact has an excellent team working on other uses for the electricity, including transmission grid upgrades and the accelerated conversion of businesses to renewable electricity. We're well progressed with customers, helping them reduce their energy costs and carbon footprint, and the acquisition of Simply Energy has enhanced our capability in this regard. We successfully piloted our demand flexibility platform, which rewards commercial and industrial customers for reduced energy use at peak times, so we don't have to resort to fossil fuel generation to meet high demand. In our own operations, the increased price and reduced reliability of gas is accelerating the case for replacing thermal plant with new baseload geothermal. In this context, we took the decision to drill 4 appraisal wells on the Tauhara field as part of our option to develop a new geothermal power station there. I'm convinced that Contact will continue its excellent progress in reducing its carbon emissions, innovating to support our customers, and providing excellent returns to you, our shareholders. Finally, I would like to wish my successor, Mike Fuge, the very best, and hope to have laid good foundations for his success. It's been a privilege to be the Chief Executive for the past 8 years. I thank the board and the many people I've worked with and wish you a prosperous future. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.
Thank you, Dennis. We now move on to a discussion of Contact's financial statements. The financial statements of Contact for the year ended 30 June 2019 were released to the market on the 12th of August and are set out in the annual report, which is available on the website. I'd now like to open the floor for any questions you may have specifically on Contact's financial statements. KPMG audit partners are present at the meeting should shareholders have any questions for them. There will be plenty of time later for questions that you may have of a more general nature. We have some microphones available. If you wish to speak, please put up your hand and wait for a microphone to be brought to you so that we can all hear your question. Are there any questions on the financial statements?
Thank you. Jenny Miller, shareholder and proxy holder. It's a more or less a question for the auditors. Meridian and Genesis, they have a statement that actually verifies their carbon emissions, and I'm wondering if at some stage you would look to doing the same rather than just talking about it, actually have it verified by someone and put it in writing.
My understanding, we actually have retained Deloitte to do the carbon verification for us. Is that correct?
Yeah, Deloitte do the verification for us. We just haven't taken the final expensive step of having that certified by Deloitte, but rest assured there is third-party assurance on all of our figures.
Are there any other questions regarding the financial statements? If there are no more questions, we'll move on to the formal resolutions for the meeting. These are outlined in the notice of meeting sent to all shareholders in October. Voting on these resolutions will be by poll. Each resolution will be put to the meeting with the proxy holder the proxy voting results displayed on the screens. For those of you here with us today in Auckland, you'll be able to cast your vote by filling in the form you brought with you or received at the registration desk on the way in, and which will be collected at the end of the formal part of the meeting. If you're a shareholder and did not register on arrival and wish to vote, please make your way to the registration desk just outside the room, and staff from Link will assist you. If you're both a shareholder and a proxy holder, or a shareholder company representative, or have more than one holding, you would have received a separate voting card for each holding. When you vote on the resolutions, please complete all voting cards given to you at registration. For those attending the meeting online, you'll be able to cast your vote using the electronic voting card that you will have received when you validated your registration using the holder number. If you have any issues, please refer to the virtual annual meeting online portal guide. Resolutions 1 and 2 are set out in the notice of meeting, are each to be considered as ordinary resolution, and as such must be approved by a simple majority of votes cast by shareholders entitled to vote and voting on the resolution. The third resolution, the revocation and adoption of Contact's new constitution, requires the approval of a majority of 75% or more of the votes of those shareholders entitled to vote and voting. Our first resolution today relates to the re-election of one of our existing directors. It is now my pleasure to move that Eleanor Trout be re-elected as a director of Contact. Eleanor has been on the board since October 2016 and is a member of the Health, Safety and Environment Committee. A brief biography for Eleanor is set out in the notice of meeting. The board unanimously recommends that shareholders vote in favour of her re-election. I would now like to invite Eleanor to speak in support of her re-election.
Thank you, Rob. As you may know, I recently concluded the independent government inquiry into the Auckland fuel crisis of 2017, in which I chaired. That experience, among others, gives me a unique insight into the importance of security of energy supply to our country, its businesses and its people. As a professional engineer with more than 30 years' experience, I'm also familiar with the many issues facing the energy and infrastructure sectors. I have a deep knowledge and experience across the energy supply chain, and am very aware of the impacts emerging technologies will have on how we generate and consume electricity. As Chair of the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Authority, EECA, I'm also acutely aware of the importance of demand-side solutions to ensuring the resilience and security of our electricity system, as well as the government's targets to achieve a low-carbon economy. Of course, this also includes the way we look at our customers, both big and small, an area that was closely examined by the Electricity Pricing Review. Rob referred earlier to the big changes occurring in the electricity sector and the energy sector as a whole, notably the impact of climate change. In my view, Contact Energy is a key part of the solution to tackling climate change, and with the right strategy, together with its mix of assets, we can maximise value for shareholders and society alike, including looking after our environment for future generations to enjoy. I look forward to continuing to govern in the interests of Contact's shareholders. Thank you for your consideration. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.
Thank you, Eleanor. I now invite discussion on the resolution. Are there any questions that shareholders present or online would like to ask Eleanor?
Thank you very much, Eleanor, for telling us you're an engineer. Could you tell us which type of engineering you do? I have them, all sorts of them in my family, and I know they can be quite different.
A civil engineer. A civil engineer.
Thank you.
I thought it was just good and bad.
There are no questions from shareholders attending online. Please now complete your voting card beside Resolution 1. Please indicate your vote by marking either the for, against, or abstain in the appropriate place on the voting card. That will be done at the end. Right, moving on to the second resolution. The second resolution to be considered relates to the auditor. I now move that the directors be authorised to fix the fees and expenses of the auditor. KPMG is Contact's auditor. This resolution proposes that the board be authorised to fix the remuneration of the auditor, which is the conventional practice for New Zealand listed companies. It reflects the fact the level of the auditor's workload and therefore fee may need to change from time to time to take account of changes in the company's size or complexity or changes of the law or accounting standards. I now invite discussion on the resolution.
Mr. Chairman, Jenny Miller again. How long have KPMG been the auditors, and when was the last time the partners were rotated?
I mean, certainly the rules on rotation are 5 years. I'm looking for Sonia to nod. And I think they've been our auditors for more than 10 years.
Sorry, I do have the answer to that.
Last year.
Rob, perhaps I can just add that the partner on the audit from KPMG will be coming up for rotation after the next financial year is complete. So there'll be a rotation at that time.
Thank you. I understand more than 10 years. When is it coming up for tender, the audit work, or do you put it up for tender?
There's no proposal to put it up for tender at the moment.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Right, please now complete your voting card beside Resolution 2. Please indicate your vote by marking either the for, against, or abstain in the appropriate place in the voting card. Right, moving on to our final resolution. Our final resolution relates to the revocation and adoption of Contact's constitution. I now move that Contact's existing constitution be revoked and a new constitution be adopted in the form presented at the meeting with the effect from the close of the meeting. The key reason for this resolution is that the NZX has published new listing rules dated the 1st of January 2019, which applied to Contact from the 22nd of January 2019. As this is the first shareholders meeting since that time, Contact is required to update its constitution to ensure it meets the requirements of and is consistent with the new rules. The principal amendments to the Constitution are summarised in the notice of meeting, and a document explaining the key differences between the proposed new Constitution and the existing Constitution is also available on our website. The changes are largely technical in nature. We welcome any questions on the details of these changes, and I now invite discussion on the resolution. Appears to be no questions. Thank you. Please now complete your voting card beside Resolution 3. Please indicate your vote by marking either the for, against, or abstain in the appropriate place on the voting card. Have all those who wish to vote now voted? Would appear so. Link Market Services will collect your voting papers. Please place your voting paper in the ballot boxes as they are passed around. Shareholders participating via the virtual meeting website should now submit their votes online. Voting will be open until the close of the meeting. So,
could we see the proxies for Ellen and Trout?
yes, that is about to occur. If you could just bear with us. For information of shareholders, here are the proxy votes received for all 3 resolutions.
Thank you.
Who was that for? Who was 41?
My memory's not half an hour ago. Last
Oh,
year.
yeah. Who was the fastest? What was the fastest time? Thank you. Done.
Yeah. Still sleep okay.
Did she get more than you did when you went up?
That was like 112,000 a piece. It was like a check.
Did we go together? We went all right, you and me?
Okay, the votes will be counted and results will be announced to the NZX and ASX this afternoon. We now move on to the general business. It is your opportunity to discuss anything we have not already covered or ask questions of the board or management team. Does anyone present or online have a question?
Hi, Michael Bowden, shareholder. I noted that you said that 2 board members are leaving the board, and it sounded like you were bringing 3 people on, 3 new board members. So are you increasing the size of the board?
Yes, so that increase in size occurred last year.
Okay.
Contact had a relatively small board of 6 people, and now in the past year, that is, last year, calendar year, it increased to 7 people. I don't think you would describe 7 people by any stretch as a large board, but we thought certainly bringing additional capability was worthwhile And obviously that additional person was John McDonald, who brings a wealth of experience both as a chief executive but also in the technology and online space.
Okay, if that's the case, will you be looking at some...
Sorry, could you speak up, sir?
Sorry, if that's the case, at some point in the future, will you be looking at increasing aggregate board fees?
Sorry, increasing the...
Aggregate board fees.
No, we have some space between what are the total cap on director fees versus where the directors' fees are now. So I don't envisage any need in the immediate future to change that.
Okay, thanks.
Kia ora, everybody. I have two questions, and they may be out of line as general business, but I'd like to voice them anyway. Number one is, why have the proxies been left to after most people have voted? I consider them to be a bearing on people's voting. Would you like to answer that one first or take the second question?
I think it's fair to say we take the opposite view, which is simply that people should be able to vote with knowledge that their vote will count. So by putting up the proxies prior to that, there's some suggestion it's a fait accompli already. So we like to give the view that everyone's votes count, and we think they do.
Thank you. I agree that every vote counts, but I think we have a right to see the proxies before the voting is asked for. The second question is, do we have a feel, or can you tell me what percentage of customers don't pay their bills on time?
That's relatively specific, so I'll ask Dennis if he'll comment on that.
I mean, on average, over the last few years, it's in the order of about 7 or 8%.
And just as an adjunct to that, what sort of saving are we making by denying people a prompt payment discount? And how are the two other initiatives working in terms of replacing that discount?
So there's a few ways to think about this, but we don't see it as denying customers a competitive price for electricity. Customers who move off a discounted price move to a lower priced standard rate. So, I mean, our objective is always to maintain competitiveness and affordability. Obviously, it's a little bit more complex than changing one product for another, and that's why we've introduced different payment methods, which are actually working quite well. So customers who often get into trouble and can't pay their bill on time, it's a budgeting or cash flow issue. So providing them with the ability to prepay at no extra cost has been useful, and also aligning payment timing with their weekly or fortnightly wages. So we see it as a bit of a package, which, you know, over time will help those customers who struggle not struggle as much, and it appears to be working so far.
Thank you.
Lynn Webber, shareholder. It's a question about transmission pricing. Given that Tiwai eats up the 14%, they also contribute to transmission pricing. Have you done a sort of a stress type test on what losing Rio's contribution to transmission pricing would impact on Contact? You also said that you thought transmission pricing needed to was unfair, I think was the word that you used when you spoke. What do you regard as a fair transmission pricing for a company like Contact? And what do you think, if indeed Rio did leave, what that impact would be on transmission pricing and ultimately on the consumer?
So let me answer that in two ways. One is we do model, and we're certainly in very active analysis mode now with this review out there. I think, Dennis, it's about 60 million that aluminium smelter contributes to the transmission. That's a very substantial amount, and obviously would be respread over the rest of New Zealand, so that in itself would not be a good thing. I think you should interpret my comments on the transmission pricing methodology more as that it's just taken far too long, and it's gone through literally 3 phases. And as I mentioned, it started for the aluminium smelter with appeared to be a prize of 50 million that's gone down now to 20 and then to 10 and pushed it further out. I just don't think that itself has been helpful in making a settled environment for people, to make decisions about investment and things like that. So we do need certainty going on. And I think in setting this review going, what it does say out of the end of all this, we need some certainty.
My apology, everybody. I neglected to give my name. Peter Mooseberger, shareholder.
Yes, there's my name. We're a shareholder. I see the contract for Tiwai Point runs out in 2030. Well, we must have a contractual obligation with them. Even if they pull the pin, they'd be liable for power supply until then, wouldn't they?
No, they're not. No, they have an ability after a 3-month review to give notice at 12, to close it in 12 months.
Go ahead first.
Mr. Chairman, my name is Martin Ellis, and I just would like to see a little bit more clarification on this Tiwai Point situation. My question really relates to their activity, business activity. The final pot line was only recommissioned a few years ago, maybe 3 years ago, and it had been mothballed for quite a long time, right?
That's correct.
Now, the company owning them would only go ahead with that recommissioning if they could see a vibrant and profitable future. And here we are talking about possible demise of it. It seems an abrupt turn of events. So are we looking purely at a negotiating situation which they'll back off once they've got the best possible deal, not only from yourselves and the other generators like Meridian, but also from the government? And alternatively, is there something happening on the international field which is colouring it and we should be aware of? For example, the Trump administration in the United States has imposed a significant tariff on steel and aluminium imports into the United States, I think 25%. Is that impacting on Rio's future, or are there alternative markets, such as Europe, for example, that can absorb their output? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, so you're quite correct when the 4th pot line opened last October, a year ago, and so obviously that, as you say, is quite a U-turn. One international aspect is aluminium prices have come down quite a lot over that period. So that's obviously an influencing factor. I think the fact of the matter is Rio is a large global company. It has a large portfolio of aluminium smelters throughout the world. Our understanding is Tiwai represents about 8% of their smelting production, so it's not large by any stretch of the imagination. And so we are at the behest a bit of decision-making that probably occurs in London around this. But we shouldn't lose sight that Tiwai is also a very, it's fed by hydro. It produces a low-carbon, high-quality aluminium. One would hope that, people see its contribution in a global sense, particularly around its carbon footprint. Dennis, do you want to add to that?
No, but we welcome any help on the negotiating approach. As you can imagine, we're we're all pretty motivated to find a solution. But as Rob has mentioned, we're dealing with a large international player. But rest assured that me and the management team are working it quite hard on your behalf.
John MacArthur, shareholder. First, let me applaud you on the work you're doing with TCFD, CDP and GRI reporting for your climate change and, for that matter, the leadership in the Climate Leaders Coalition. You talk of looking to the future, and there seems to be some movement both with Mercury looking at its new or extending the wind farm near Palmerston North. You're drilling for more geothermal. I wonder if you'd like to comment about the future with hydrogen generation from renewable electricity and what sort of horizon you see that major development of electricity usage developing. Have you got any comment on hydrogen?
Yeah, we are part of the body that is around hydrogen, looking at investment in that. I think the investment case has some distance to go, particularly around technology, and one of the issues is that the best gains for New Zealand as we look forward, particularly for the next decade, is, as I mentioned and Dennis mentioned, is really the vehicle fleet and thermal industry. So that's where our focus is at the moment. There are obviously developing cases around hydrogen. We think that will come closer into, I guess, a frame in the next decade as technology for hydrogen moves along. But at the moment, we're very focused on the conversion of thermal out of industry and New Zealand converting its car fleet.
Thank you. One smaller question, perhaps, is that one of my local schools is still burning coal in the winter, and it's actually more common than you might think. So I wonder if Contact has any initiative they would like to roll out to get coal-burning schools to stop.
Well, you will have then remember the comment I made in my comments, which was the government can do a lot to kickstart and get momentum into decarbonisation. Their footprint is not immaterial. It's not huge, but it's not immaterial. And you think about boilers across schools, you think about universities, you think about hospitals. And so there's a number of areas that are prime for electric boilers that, again, can start the momentum in decarbonisation. So we think, as I said, the government can really step up on these sort of things and start a program going. I'll just take an online question. What is the likely long-term outlook for the company gas generation because of the ban on offshore exploration? Actually, I'll get Dennis to comment on that.
Clearly we've been reducing our reliance on gas over the last 10 years, so the offshore exploration ban per se doesn't affect our medium-term plans. We're looking to remove more of our gas-fired generation anyway. What it does mean is that the limited gas-fired generation that will be needed for many decades to come because of hydrology variances will have to be developed onshore, and there is onshore gas that's there to be developed. And in the longer term, the importation of gas. So unless there's a technology change and there's something better than gas-fired generation to handle the variances in hydrology, then the offshore exploration ban probably in many, many decades makes gas a little bit more expensive, but it doesn't change our plans materially.
Good morning, Morena. My name is Peter McRae. I would like to ask you a question about your beginnings, because when this company was floated some years ago, it was floated as a sort of a mums and dads investment venture, and there were a minimum amount and a minimum amount of shares being issued for small amounts of money. And then, since then, you did have a dividend reinvestment plan, and I think that's been wiped. And I would like to see it reinstated, because there are still a number of people around who have perhaps less than 1,000 shares. And my understanding, you stopped that some years ago, so I would like to see it reinstated as soon as possible.
Thank you for the question. So sadly, it is not our intention to reintroduce a dividend reinvestment scheme. And
why not?
It's simply this reason. One is that when companies are doing that, they're doing it to increase their capital. And that is not something that we need to do. We have probably in the context of the last 10 years, if not longer, we have the strongest financial position we've ever had, so it would simply make no sense.
It is a benefit to you as far as cash goes, just by promoting a dividend scheme.
Well, again, cash flow generation is very strong as well. And so we, as a board, think about all the shareholders.
But the small punters can't afford $8 a share nowadays. And that's one of the problems. It used to be 3 or 4. And it was a struggle. Now, when it's around $8, it makes it harder still. And when you're talking about 200 or 300 shares, or 1,000 shares, or a couple of thousand, over time, you're helping your customers and shareholders and promoting your own original concept of mums and dads company.
Yeah, so I think that's a different issue to a dividend reinvestment scheme, because with a dividend reinvestment scheme, it obviously applies to the whole company. And so we'll take on notice your comment around the difficulty of shareholders buying in at low levels.
Well, I'd like to ask you if you take a show of hands today, or how many here in the room would support a dividend reinvestment scheme reinstated. Could you do that?
No, we won't be doing that.
Well, that's not very democratic, is it?
No, as I said, we do think of all shareholders.
Noel Thompson, shareholder. I've just got a question on a different angle. I noticed on page 13 that there's been a significant reduction in the number of customers. It's probably more like, 15% or something for residential, and even the business customers. And yet, your turnover is, for the year, looks quite good. I was just wondering, is this all due to normal churn, or is it something to do with your new pricing structure?
No, it's actually to do with the sale of rock gas. So that was simply a business customers moving to another owner.
So it would have been quite relevant if you actually did show that, wouldn't it?
It is noted at the bottom.
With the gas, where?
Yeah.
Oh, well, it's noted there, is it? Yeah. Oh, sorry about that.
Jenny Merrily, shareholder. I'm sorry not to introduce myself last time, I just forgot. Further to the previous question about shares in lieu of dividend, if you want that, can't you write to who are the people, Link, and ask them for that?
No.
Yes, my name's Gary Kilmister. I'd like to ask, how does Contact compare with the other electric companies in the derivatives trading?
I think all four major generators have quite strong trading units, and we think our team that does the day-to-day trading is, and it is a very key part of a gentailer, because on one side you've got your retail and commercial customers, and on the other side you've got your generation. And so the team that lives in the middle, you want to make sure is a really good team. And we think our team is good, but we shouldn't, we don't have a view about whether they're better or worse than the others. We think all the others have good teams as well.
Ewan. My name's Ewan. Hi, I'm a shareholder. I wonder if you could explain why the new board members haven't been put up for confirmation to the shareholders at this meeting. I understand that an extra two board members have been appointed during the year, and why weren't they put up for confirmation at this meeting, like most other public companies do?
They were confirmed last year.
Yeah, that occurred last year. Yes, it did. No, it occurred at the last annual meeting. And the rules have changed now that instead of a minimum percentage of the board coming, it's now 3 years. So that's why today we've only seen Eleanor come forward.
Mike Prain, shareholder. In the unhappy event that TY closes, can the total electricity generated for that area from Manapuri be transmitted to the North Island, or is that totally constrained?
No, it won't all be able to come north straight away. It will take some investment from Transpower, which will take some time.
My name's Robert Gray, shareholder. I've noticed that the share price has come back about nearly $2 off its highs. If the share price continues to come down, would the board consider a share buyback?
I think we just need to reflect on why that's occurred. And the principal reason why that has occurred is the uncertainty around TY Point. So until we know where that's going in the next quarter, I don't think we should either be buying or buying back shares. We will wait and see where that goes before we take any action.
Ross Colson, shareholder. I can understand regards to your capital requirements with the reinvestment scheme, but Contact several years ago used to run what was called a top-up scheme, where it was limited to shareholders under 10,000 shares, and you bought shares on market to cover that. Is that something that could be used for those that want reinvestment?
Sorry. Well, obviously it is something. Look, we will, as I mentioned to the previous shareholder, we will take this comment back on board and we'll go and reflect on it. That is a mechanism. What I can say is I don't think a dividend reinvestment scheme is the answer, but if there are other ways we can look at that shareholder need or whatever, we'll have a look at it. Thank you. Are there any other questions? One more.
Mohammed Naki, shareholder, a long time.
You sold rock gas and the other storage for a total value of 460 million. Then you bought Simply Energy. Now, could you tell us a bit more about what is its function? Is it marketing? Is it technology? Has it got a physical presence? And what was the trade-off, please?
So firstly, I'll say they're not connected at all. The selling, you should interpret the selling of Ahuroa and rock gas as very much both a positioning of what we see our future gas presence, but also, and really importantly, strengthening our balance sheet for future investment. Simply is a very modest investment, and it's really a company that helps industrial customers to manage and efficiently manage their energy, and particularly where there's decarbonisation opportunities, it helps them in that road to that. There's some very good people at Simply, and we thought that was a much better way than us trying to do it internally, and they had some good momentum as well. So we look at Simply as really very much one of our answers to that the thermal presence in industry reducing, and our ability to help our customers do that. Did you want to add anything more, Dennis?
Yeah, I mean, the reason for buying Simply is that it accelerates that understanding and opportunity with large customers. So the potential for an increased carbon price and some recent increases in electricity prices have made commercial and industrial customers much more interested. So we're working with a lot of customers to manage their demand. There is technology in Simply that helps customers manage their demand. So we just saw it as an acceleration. There's a lot of talk of decarbonisation, and this helps us touch and feel it every day with customers. So that was the core reason.
I invested heavily, 49.9% of the thing. My question was also, how much did you invest? Was it bought, or how much
for
did
that
it cost?
for that shareholding? Sorry, I mentioned it was $10 million.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Right. As there's no further questions, I'll now declare the meeting closed. For those present in the room, I'd like to invite you to stay and join us for morning tea. Please feel free to talk to my fellow directors and members of Contact's senior management during this time. We will be all wearing name badges and very much look forward to the opportunity to talk to you. If you have any customer service queries and would like to sign up as a customer, Fiona Crawley and some members of his team are here and more than happy to help you. Thank you very much for your attendance and continued support of Contact. I wish you a safe journey home.